This year's NATO Leaders Summit in Ankara comes at a time when relations between the US and some European states are under increasing pressure. There's disagreement over how to deal with a number of conflicts around the world and how to confront new challenges faced by the alliance. I'm Andrew Hopkins, and I've been speaking to Akif Cagatay Kilic, the Turkish President's chief advisor on foreign policy and security, one-on-one. Akif Cagatay Kilic, thank you very much for talking to TRT World. Now, the NATO Leaders Summit in Ankara promises to be a historic summit, and it's clearly a prestigious honour to host the event. Now, from Turkey's point of view, what are your aims for the summit, and what would you consider to be a successful outcome?
Well, basically, Turkey has been in the NATO alliance for more than 70 years now. And during that time, we have shown that we take our responsibilities pretty seriously. We have been engaged in nearly all of the operations that NATO has done as an alliance. And for us, of course, the NATO summit is coming at a time where, unfortunately, there's a lot of turmoil in the world and also in our neighborhood. But in this sense, it falls on us as the host nation and host country in this NATO summit to bring everybody together and have an inclusive summit where we can discuss all the different variations of security issues, finance, projections for the future, and what we should be or should not be doing. So the aim and the hope is to have an inclusive, open-minded summit which very openly can discuss the future of NATO. We have already done it in a few summits before, but the timing, of course, is very, very important in the days of today. And because, we have a war to the north, we have a ceasefire and an agreement, hopefully, between Iran and the United States. But there is a lot of things still going on in the region. There is a situation in Gaza. And there is, of course, other things that we have to address as well, security cooperations and the technologies for future. So the aim is and the hope is to have an inclusive, open discussion summit which will lead to a more unified, if you will, NATO for the future.
You mentioned there some of the conflicts in the region, for instance, Iran also involving the United States and Israel. And in all of these conflicts, there have been differences between countries in the Middle East and also some of the NATO members as well. For instance, there are concerns in the Gulf about security going forward, and Turkey has mentioned this already in public statements. What role can Turkey play in terms of facilitating a sort of bringing together of Middle East countries and NATO countries, and what benefits can this bring in the future?
Well, of course, NATO is an alliance which is made out of 32 member states. So there is differences in approaches to certain issues. There will be also, and there are, different perceptions regarding threat levels and what should be done regarding those levels. So this is something which is normal because you have 32 members that have all different ideas, historical developments, geopolitical positions. But the aim, of course, will be that, you mentioned the Middle East, obviously the conflict between Iran, Israel, and the United States has shown that there are a lot of security threats within the region as well. And Turkey being a long-standing member of NATO, we know the alliance's responses, we know the alliance's priorities, we know our priorities, but we also know, if you will, what our neighbors in the region are perceiving to be threat analyses or what should be done. We understand the culture, we understand how people want to see the future. And we also know that the resolve to go into a more harmonious future is through cooperation, not to conflict. A lot of responsibilities fall on different countries, different regions, but Turkey in its position, its unique position is geopolitically, geographically, and with its strong military presence, but also its strong military technologies, its vibrant and young society, its scientists, the history, the culture. We can be not only a bridge. I mean, we are always not always, but most of the time referred to as a bridge. A bridge is something which just sits between two parts, A and B, and connects them to a certain logistical point. We are not only a bridge. We are, of course, a bridge in the sense of bridging the cultures and bringing people together, but we are part of both regions. What do I mean with regions? For example, if you refer to Turkey in our sense, its geography, we are in Europe, but we are also part of the Middle East. We are also part of North Africa. We are also part of the Caucasus. We see ourselves geographically and historically and also culturally being part of all these regions, because we have all elements from all regions which have been harmoniously combined, and we are proud of our heritage from our past. And this brings us to the point where we are able to talk to everybody, to have a dialogue with everybody, and if you will, to facilitate a understanding between different parties and different understandings.
Can you tell me, do you have anything specific in mind for this Ankara summit, what you would like to do between Middle Eastern countries and NATO members?
Well, obviously, going through the last 3, 4, 5 months in the region, the Middle Eastern countries, which include the Gulf countries, which include different countries to the northern hemisphere of the African continent, which are directly affected, the Gaza war. There are a lot of security issues, but not only security issues, humanitarian issues. There are also issues regarding developments towards the future. What will happen in the future? There's economical sides of this. There is a part which is economically affecting the whole world. There is security matters that directly affect people who are living in our area, in our region. And what we want to bring about, we have guests that will be arriving for the NATO summit as well. Our president has been engaged with a lot of the Middle Eastern leaders for long times, as you know, but there has been a lot of contact in the last 3, 4 months, especially after the conflict. We have been engaged in diplomacy and facilitation regarding coming together and finding a ceasefire solution. So the aim would be obviously to bring different ideas and points together and try to bring them to a point where we can talk to each other and resolve the issues that we have, or which we will be going to have, on the table, rather than reverting to military operations or a military conflict. Why do we say this? Because obviously everybody is getting affected by this. Like I said, there's a humanitarian issue on one side, which is actually the most important part of it, but as well, world trade is being affected. If you will, the harmony of different countries living together, which then brings about a more prosperous society and more prosperous region, is being affected. The world economy is being affected. So having all these experiences and gone through a very, very specific time where President Erdogan had to personally put weight behind a lot of things to bring people together and try to resolve conflict, it is a good opportunity when we have everybody in Ankara around the table to talk about these things openly, about these topics openly. Our foreign minister has been traveling around the world to meet people and bring them together. So in this sense, if we have the opportunity, the possibility to have a more viable understanding towards the future, a more comprehensive understanding, we will try to do that.
Also related to the conflicts in the Middle East that have been going on in the last few months, we've seen divisions between NATO members, different assessments of what the situation is. They all have different priorities, particularly, for instance, with the conflict in Iran between the United States and some of the European countries as well. So what do you think at the Ankara summit can be done to try and restore some sense of unity between member states on these issues?
Like I said before, 32 countries, 32 nations, 32 governments, 32 states will have different views on various topics. They will not be all aligned in everything. But there is a basic understanding of where we should be going and what we should be doing. In the sense what NATO should be in the future, the alliance's deterrence capabilities, the sharing of various capabilities in the military sense, but also values that we share towards a more peaceful and viable world order. That I'm not mentioning here world order that we want to produce a new world order. That's not what I'm saying. But having a new understanding of how we should be interacting with each other in the future. Today's institutions and political landscape has been shaped after the First and Second World War, especially after the Second World War, which has been challenged quite strongly. And there need to be new maybe approaches to various topics that have been maybe not put on the table. For example, if you look at the European Union members that are also members of NATO, there's sometimes overlapping, there's sometimes not the strong or the most strong will to cooperate openly on a lot of issues, but these are things that we approach, that we talk about, and that we try to resolve. Same here. All these differences that we have will be discussed, and it's important to have an inclusive summit, and therefore I believe it's very important that President Trump will be attending the summit in Ankara at the invitation of our president, and I think that will bring everybody together around the table to discuss these issues very openly.
One of the other issues on Turkey's southern flank is Syria. Yes. Now, Turkey for many years has been playing host to millions of refugees from Syria, helping out some of its NATO allies in this respect. Now, after many years inside Syria, there's an internationally recognized government. And Turkey has been sort of acting as a kind of go-between at various stages between the authorities in Damascus and some of the NATO members. So do you think there's a role now for NATO within Syria or even with individual NATO members?
Of course, NATO as an institution will not be military or in any way be involved, or is not projected to be involved in Syria. Member countries have now, like you said, started to recognize the interim government within Syria. And the government has been able to interact with a lot of NATO member countries, the governments of various countries, starting with the United States, but also a lot of the different member states of NATO. Coming to mind is Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, all have been involved and interacting with the Syrian government and its president. So, of course, Turkey being neighbors, and we have a border which is 900 kilometers long, a lot of refugees that have fled the Assad regime for their lives, which are now gradually returning to their home. But there are also other issues: the rebuilding of Syria, the restructuring of the state system, which has been under the pressure of the Ba'ath regime for a very long time. So all these things, of course, we are involved in the sense that we are trying to help when help is asked from us. Unfortunately, Israel again is sort of looking as a destabilizer also in the Syrian issues here. It seems to be better in the last couple of months or 2 months, but we have to be watchful, because we don't want Syria, which is stable at this point, has a structure towards the future, has a plan towards the future, is being recognized internationally by a lot of governments, international institutions, and aid and help in the sense of assistance is coming in. We don't want this to be disrupted and destabilized, because I think a lot of people who have fled Syria are now trying to return to Syria and making plans to return to Syria. So this is a humanitarian issue. We have to work on that. So the disruptions should be to a minimum, if not at all, erased. And it will of course have a positive effect. The positive developments in Syria will have a positive effect throughout the region, because geographically Syria is, its land is sitting right in the middle of a lot of different energy corridors, logistical corridors, but also humanitarian cooperation capabilities and possibilities. So for a matter of fact, of course, we will be talking to a lot of our counterparts, our neighbors, our allies, on how we can much more assist Syria to become even stronger and more stable for the future.
One of the other big issues at the Ankara summit is going to be defence spending. All the NATO member states have committed to spending 5% of GDP by the year 2035. What's your opinion on this particular issue? And now, right at this moment, there are new threats against NATO. There's hybrid warfare, there's attacks on undersea data cables, cargo routes, this kinds of thing. How can this increased spending result, do you think, in sort of stronger capabilities and a sort of more cohesive alliance?
Like you mentioned, the threat analysis situation has changed dramatically. I mean, we are not only talking about a camp which is engaging with another camp at these days anymore. It's various different fields, if you will. There's energy security, there's logistical security, cyber security, hybrid warfare. Even the environmental issues are now being incorporated into the analysis for the future. So all of these coming together, of course, it's not only a question, my personal belief is it's not only a question of money or the financial side that you put in. It's of course important, but it's more important how you apply this financial strength and how you cooperate on that. We as Turkey, unfortunately, have from time to time witnessed a sort of closed environment regarding cooperation on military issues. It's better now. A lot of the unwritten, I wouldn't say sanctions, but unwritten this cooperation attitudes have changed. So that is a positive side, because in this world today, one country can't answer all the threats or can have all the capabilities to address threats coming from various different new sources or various sources. So we need a cooperation, and NATO is based on burden sharing. NATO is based on sharing the technology and sharing the financial strengths that you have with all these allies. This is the important part. That is something that we have to address and work more on, because in the end of the day, you're only as much deterrent capability. Your deterrence capability is only as strong as the alliance is. If everybody is doing something else, if everybody is walking away from certain responsibilities or their responsibilities under the NATO Charter, then you have fragmentation, and this is not something that we want to see. So this is where we are going to sit down, talk, and try to be more inclusive and more burden sharing towards the future.
On the issue of defence spending again, and particularly with focus on the war in Ukraine at the moment, how long do you think NATO's support, military support specifically, continue for the government in Kyiv? And also, can the Turkish defence industry have a role in this? Can there be some system whereby there's an upgrading or an increase in the amount of military support, military products that the Turkish government gives to Ukraine, or maybe something where the Turkish defence industry sells products to Europe and then Europe passes that on to Ukraine? Is there something like that being thought about at the moment in Turkey?
Well, of course, we want to see the end of the conflict between the Russian Federation and Ukraine tomorrow. I mean, everybody in the world wants to have an end to the conflict and to the war in Ukraine. So obviously, NATO as a military alliance and members of the alliance are supportive of Ukraine. But there is always, and I think we have shown to the world very strongly that on the military side there is a certain action being taken. But this will not resolve the issue. This will not resolve the conflict. This will not end the war. We need a political solution, a diplomatic solution to the conflict and the war in Ukraine. That's what we have been also engaged in through various ways. When the conflict started, when the war started, it was Turkey that has taken, I think, the most responsible and responsibility-wise highest step in closing the Turkish Straits, the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles. We have closed the Turkish Straits, and therefore the Black Sea has been a cold sea. Not in the sense of the water temperature, but in the sense of the warm conflict. At the same time, at the personal involvement of our president, we have been able to build a grain deal. A lot of grain has flown through the Turkish Straits into the world from the Ukraine, and this was something that was achieved during the conflict. Also the humanitarian side of it. You know, this conflict has to end. I have been involved in a lot of meetings and negotiations regarding this conflict. We have always said that the end decision lies with the Ukrainians and the Russians. So the Russian Federation and Ukraine will make peace. How they will achieve it, they have to decide it. But we are there to provide as much assistance as is asked of us.
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, he came to Turkey recently. He praised the Turkish defence industry, said all NATO members should cooperate with it. Now, at the same time, we've got the situation in the European Union, which has a lot of NATO members, where they seem reluctant to get involved with Turkey, at least on an institutional basis. You can see, for instance, the Safe Defence Procurement Scheme, which Turkey is not yet included in. And yet, at the same time, we've still got European member states who quite clearly are keen to do bilateral defence deals with Turkey. So how do you see all this panning out? Is Turkey going to become de facto part of the European defence architecture as they show it, as they say it is, but without actually institutionally becoming part of it? What's your view on this?
I'll start with a very strong sentence there. I think there's no way of finding European security without the involvement of Turkey. Turkey is involved, will be involved, has to be involved in the security structures of Europe, and I think it's just reality. You know, there's no way going around it. But like you mentioned, there are some European member states within the European Union that are playing a different card regarding the cooperation with Turkey as the EU as an institution. Bilaterally, all the countries of the European Union, members of the European Union, maybe with the exception of one or two, are cooperating with Turkey on defense industry, on defense technologies, on various different subjects. But defense industry being one very important part of it. We have shown in the last 20 years how strong our defense industry is, what we are capable of in the air, on land, on sea, manned, unmanned. We've talked about certain conflicts in the region. Turkey has been providing support and security for a lot of different various places. The institutional approach towards Turkey is sort of, I would say, problematic. It's puzzling, but it's problematic because everybody knows that there will be no security structure without Turkey's involvement. But we have to also be very careful that we should not duplicate what we have already achieved within the NATO framework. Because mind you, all NATO members, quite a big number of NATO members are also members of the European Union. Some are not, which are big countries. The United States is not a member of the European Union, which is the biggest member of NATO. The United Kingdom is no longer a member of the European Union, but it is also in the structure and framework of the European Union in different ways. Turkey as well. There are members of NATO which are not members of the European Union. Canada, for example, Norway. So there are these members. So we should not be duplicating and overlapping the capabilities that we have already been able to achieve and bring about for the last 70 years within NATO. It can complement, it can strengthen, but we have to be very careful, especially in this day and age where we're living now, not to duplicate and not to lose the focus of what a security cooperation is for the future. You rightly mentioned that Secretary General Rutte has visited the security defense industry of Turkey. I know that he talked about it in open speeches. He has seen with his own eyes what the Turkish defense industry is capable of. And when we have this kind of capability, I think we should be talking about cooperation, working together, sharing the capabilities that we have, and not be talking about exclusion.
Akif Cagatay Kilic, thank you very much.